It's a legislative thing.
Oh, you have to go to legislature?
You should have signed your CPI.
Right?
Ding, ding, ding,
We just need
ding.
a sponsor.
Go to it.
Yeah.
Roy will come up with a
25
sponsor.
seconds.
Where did you procure the gavel from?
Christine got that this morning.
It just showed up. Okay, awesome. She got tired of you wearing out your knuckles.
Maybe we could start, or you could do a survey, what the airport authorities.
Yeah.
Yeah, see.
Like that?
Yes,
So professional.
very
Thank you.
authoritative.
It's 5 o'clock.
Somewhere.
Oh,
Yeah. Good one, another change, more
Yes.
exciting.
And we all showed up on time, so thank you very much. So we'll call the meeting to order of the Boca Raton Airport Authority, and the first order of business is the roll call. So Christine, if you will.
Mr. Merrill,
Here.
Mr. Tucker,
Present.
Mr. Noble, Ms. Bud,
here.
Mr. Vogel,
Here.
Mr. Golden,
Here.
Mr. Powell.
Here.
All right, we do have a quorum for the record. The first order of business is the approval of the meeting minutes from the January 19th, 2020.
So move.
Second.
Have a motion, a second from Bob. Any discussions, any changes? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that unanimously carries. Do we have any agenda changes?
No, sir.
Public request. If any member of the public wishes to provide a comment on any item, the time to do so is now. Please complete a public comment card identifying the item upon which you wish to be heard and provide it to Ms. Landers. The public comment cards are located in the back of the room. Each member of the public wishing to comment will be provided with 5 minutes to do so. The chair reserves the right to move the public comment opportunity on a specific agenda item to the point in the agenda where the item is to be considered and or to extend the allotted time per speaker. So do we have any public comment? None. Consent agenda, anything on the consent agenda?
No, sir.
And federal, state, and municipal input.
There is none.
Okay, first order of business then, or next order is financial report, the presentation of the January 2022 financial report. I know that our treasurer is not here today, but I understand he did review the detailed documents that underlie the summary report.
Yes, he did, and he asked that I report that he had no comments or any changes or deletions to the report.
All right, with that, we'll turn it over to Jade Stewart. Jade?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jada Stewart, Accounting Manager. In your package is the financial report through January 31st, 2022. As you can see, total operating revenues year to date are approximately $2 million. Total operating expenses year to date are approximately $1.3 million. And net income before depreciation is approximately $740,000. Overall revenues are 3.8% above budget year to date, primarily due to the seasonal nature of fuel flowage and custom revenues. Expenses are down approximately 37.6% to budget year to date due to project expenses incurred but not yet received. On behalf of Airport Management and the Secretary Treasurer, we respectfully present the January 2022 financial report to the Airport Authority.
Great, thank you very much, Jada. Before we do discussion, do I have a motion to approve? Okay, Cheryl, second.
Second.
Gene, okay. Any questions for Jada? Any comments? Hearing none, all in favor of the report? Say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. Financial reports are accepted. The next item is tenant reports and requests. Do you have any of those?
No, sir.
And then now the executive director and staff reports. So let's start with the noise abatement and operations summary for the month of January 2022. And that's Rob.
Good evening. All right, so for you the operations and real estate report for the month of January 2022. As you can see, we had a 5% increase in traffic over January of 2021. Our fuel deliveries were up 2% for jet fuel, and they were down 69% for the avgas. But then that kind of just comes down to the time of the fuel deliveries to the FBOs. We did have 9 households that filed noise concerns on our hotline mostly through our online web portal. Most of them were on our arrivals 4:25, which is what we normally see. We had a couple on some over flights as well, the same individual, and then touch and go as well. Customs, we have 151 aircraft cleared customs. It's up from 126 from last year, same month. They came from 18 different countries. So we did have 41 different after hours clearings during the month. And 21 of those occurred on Tuesdays and Wednesdays were still closed. So that concludes the operations report for the month of January. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Questions for Robert? Okay, Robert, thank you very much. Annual report next. Okay, Robert, we'll just stick with Robert. We'll continue on this, our annual report. So Robert, I'll be with you.
All right, thank you. Yeah, so this is the annual operations and paper report for the entire year of 2021. So we'll just kind of go over it, and we can kind of, if there's anything that you have concerns about or questions, feel free to stop me in the middle and just ask, or if you have any ideas for how we can improve it. I'd love to hear all this too. So starting out is our operation counts for the year of 2021 compared to the last 10 years total. As you can see, the operations have been steadily increasing over the last 10 years. If you bring it back a little bit further, 2021 was the 8th busiest year, going back to 2000, which is when the tower kind of started doing what came to be. So 2007 was actually the busiest year we had with over 94,000 operations, and then after that it decreased because of the recession and kind of goes down from there, and then started to come back up as we see in the 2012 time frame. The customs from 2018. When the facility opened, it was about a half year there, so that's why you're down to about 614. I had a really good year in 2019. Obviously, in 2020, the international arrivals weren't as significant as they had been with all the restrictions. And in 2021, we did come all the way back up. There's still some international, not as busy international arrivals. So that's why we have there. But overall, it's been pretty good. You can see kind of the breakdown of the type of aircraft we get. It's kind of a little hard on this screen here, but the medium jet is our most significant arrival. All right, so we had 1,603 aircraft clearings last year, came from about 48 different countries. And you can see the breakdown. The Bahamas are still significantly the largest origin, and Canada, which is there. We did have 15 vessels that cleared. We did clear 7,147 passengers. As for our noise calls, both on our online form, our phone, any other way they want to put those emails. We had 12,659 calls for the entire year. We did have 51 different callers. A little over half of them only called once, so that's at least a good thing there. 3 callers submitted about 96% of all of our noise calls. So you can see we had a decent amount, but most of them hit small. So this next slide just kind of goes into a little bit of the noise reduction to some of the verbiage that is used there. As you can see, the decibel is what we use to measure the sound. The A-weighted decibel is what the FAA uses, so that's what it's going to be used in the whole the rest of this. And it just kind of goes into it. And then the final 4 are just the breakdowns of different ways to measure the sound. You have the day-night average, which is the DNL. This is it's like the average for the day. You can bring it over here. So it's the average sound level. The location is the penalty for night operations. You can see down at the bottom of the screen, the bottom left chart there kind of shows what that kind of breaks down to. See the penalty for night is 10 decibel penalty. So the noise is a little noisier at night. You can hear it more, so they penalize it that way. And then DNL is the standard what FAA uses in studies. So that's one of the main reasons I'll use that in some of our charts going forward. We also have the maximum sound level, which is the LMAX. That's exactly what it sounds like. It's just the moment of maximum sound. I have that in some of our charts too. And one of the main reasons I picked that one is because for the public, if they're watching on our public view and they're looking at the noise monitors, when they see it hit the highest level, that's what they're seeing. They're seeing the LMAX, they're not seeing some of the others that take a little bit more into. Well, so we have the sound exposure level next, which is SEL. That metric represents the acoustic energy of the individual noise event as if it happened within 1 second. So it takes the overall sound level and kind of compresses it into 1 second. So your SEL value is going to be higher than your LMAX, even though this noise itself never quite reached that. It's getting the whole duration of the sound. So the aircraft, as it's coming up, it's not an instantaneous noise. It builds and it does decrease again. So the SEL kind of takes all that to effect. And it's one of the better ways to really represent noise, but it doesn't always translate to the public understanding what it is sometimes. So that's why I'm using the LMAX in some of those. But in any of these charts, we can represent, easily change out for any other values. And then finally, get the equivalent sound level, and that's pretty much just the average sound level. It's very similar to the DNL, but it doesn't take any nighttime penalties into effect. So it's going to be the average sound over a period of time, you pick the period. So that's what that chart kind of shows all the different ways. You can see as your LEQ is going to be lower than your LMAX, your SEL is going to be higher. So there's a bunch of different ways to kind of show the sound levels. This chart is a comparative noise level. So you can say something like that. It's only 80 decibels and 90 decibels, but what does that actually mean to the person hearing it? So this is actually the FAA chart. They put this out, and you can see the different levels. See, like noisy urban sound at 80 decibels. A food blender at 3 feet is about 95. So it kind of gives you something to kind of see and hear. Okay, I know what that sounds like, so that must be about 95. So noise contours. So this one kind of goes into what noise contours are. So you can see the noise can be extended over. You can draw the contours for different things, such as the DNL. You can draw on a map, connect lines to the same decibel levels. You do it all around the airport, make the contours. Those maps are the noise exposure maps. And they usually contain out to about the 65 DNL contour. Some of ours contain a little bit further because 65 is pretty close to the airport, so we go out a little further. And so they're useful for comparing the aircraft noise exposure throughout the whole community, so you can kind of see where the sound levels fall. So I have our noise exposure maps that we did back in 2001, and then one more recently in 2017. You can kind of just see there the different levels. One thing to note, the further out line on the far left one is actually the 60 DNL contour, where the furthest out line on the one to the right is, I believe, it's 55. So it's not quite apples to apples looking at the furthest out line, but it's also much further in. So if you really look at the map, you can see that the noise exposure has decreased approximately 10 DNL from 2001 to 2017. So that's pretty interesting. You see that noise levels are going down. This one just goes over our noise monitoring terminals, where they are. We have 7 noise monitors. You can see where they are in the community. We've got the 3 off of each end, and then the one right off to the other side of the south of the airport. So this chart, I'm looking a little busy. It's got, so at the top, if you're looking at the multicolored lines, those are our noise monitoring terminals. So there's 7 of them there. One of them starts halfway through because noise monitor 7 installed a couple years ago. And so it's showing the DNL on those noise monitors. So it's the average for the year, the average level. So you can see down at the bottom, you can see some of the numerical values, and it increases or decreases depending, but it relatively stays about the same for the last 10 years. And then you can see the columns there. Those are the operations. So you can see as the operations are going up, the noise levels are not actually going up. They're kind of staying about the same. Some monitors have small increases, some have small decreases, but in general, they're staying relatively the same for the last 10 years. And then you can see exactly how they changed on the bottom table there. If you're interested in that as well. So then I mapped the same thing over our noise calls. So you can see, again, with the DNL from the noise terminals, it's staying roughly the same over the last 10 years. But you can see, obviously, in the green columns there, the noise calls increased drastically from 29 to 30. Back 10 years ago to now over 12,000. So this shows that the noise calls, even though they are going up, and the sound is not necessarily at the same level as noise calls. Actually, staying pretty much the same. All right, so this next one, we have actually 7 of these. I'm gonna go through them pretty quickly though. So for each of the noise monitors, this is for noise monitor number 1. That's just off the end here, around number 5. So what it shows you is each column is the amount of noise events that the noise monitors will catch at the actual aircraft. They're only aircraft noise events. The noise events start getting caught at about 60, up to 9.5 decibels. So each column shows the amount of total noise events for each decibel level, and then it's broken down a little further where the green portion is going to be your arrivals, and then the blue portion is going to be your departures. So you can see on this one, the majority are departures, or what's triggering noise events. And then as you can see, as it gets louder, you get fewer. If you go from left to right, it's getting wider and louder. And then at the bottom here, we have kind of a similar chart to what we had earlier. Shows the equivalent sound levels for each of those. And then it's got a couple of facts up at the top there, just showing busy. This one is our busiest noise monitor for departures. It's the most departure hits events, and about 93% of noise events were less than 80 decibels. And then, so kind of just quickly go through these. You can kind of see the layout of the, as far as this one's most departures. The second busiest for departures. Slightly louder than the noise monitor 1. It's a little further away, but closer lined up to the runway. And it's about 91% or less than 80. Noise monitor 3, and it has some of the fewest arrivals of any of the noise monitors. It's a little further out, catches most of the departures that turn up 95. And then it's about 98% are less than 80 decibels. You kind of see that in general, most of the aircraft are going to be less than 80. Noise monitor 4 is a little further away. It's got the fewest events of all of them. It's got about the same, 98%. Noise monitor 5 is the busiest. It's got the most noise events of any of our monitors. It's surprisingly still 98% of all of them are about 80 decibels or less than 80 decibels. And it's pretty evenly split. It does get the most arrivals, but it's pretty evenly split as far as those. It's off the end of 2, 3 on the other side there. So if you're coming in on runway 5. You're going to be hitting this. The noise monitor 6 is the one right over here, right off to the side of the runway. It's one of the noisier ones because 89% are less than 90 decibels on that. And then finally, the noise monitor 7 is one of the community south end. And again, it's mostly arrivals. One of the fewest for departures, but it's one of the most for arrivals. So it shows kind of the location. And 89% are less than decibels. So it kind of gives you an overall, just a good view of each of the noise monitors, see the different levels, kind of see that most of them are stopping in the 80s. You're going to get a few that go above it, but in general, the majority of all noise events are 60s and 70s with a few stragglers in the 80s as well. And then just kind of touch on the voluntary curfew as well, kind of go into that. It's got 1,768 operations, which is just over 2% of all of our operations. So vast majority of operations are during the daytime. And if you take into effect the 11 to 5 time frame, cutting off the hours beginning and the end, only 38% of the voluntary curfew operations happen in those the more deep overnight hours. And then you can see the breakdown right there. This slide just kind of goes into our noise abatement program. If you're with the public, if you're looking at this, you can kind of see exactly what it is that we're doing, our curfew, our departure, our voluntary departure headings that we have there. And this also just goes into our public view, what it is, the flight data, historical, noise, live noise monitoring, and how you can issue noise concerns through as well. And then the summary page kind of shows that as operations have been increasing, we're back to the pre-pandemic levels already, but the noise levels are not increasing at the same rate. Like I said, there's been remaining pretty static. The same with the noise levels. They've been going up, but the noise levels have not. And then in general, overall noise exposure is actually down, as we saw with the noise contract map. And we say this is primarily due to quieter engines aircraft have nowadays. There was a ban on the louder type aircraft for general aviation back in 2015 that the Federal Aviation Administration put out. So stage 3 level aircraft are flying now. And then we also have very few night flights. That's going to not really trigger some of those levels as well. So that kind of sums up the annual report. If you have any questions, concerns,
Questions for Robert? Yep.
So, not being a pilot, I'm just curious, does weather impact sometimes the intensity of noise? Like if there's a low cloud depth, like right now, does that kind of compress the noise more intensely and it seems more loud than if it's a clear day? Does that have anything to do with it?
I don't know if it would have anything to do with the compression of noise. It's gonna affect the type of aircraft that are flying. You're gonna be like on a day like this, it's gonna be an IFR. So you're not gonna have some VFR traffic flying around. So you're gonna be on instrument flight plans, you're gonna be flying with the longer approaches that way. So you might have less traffic at the time. So sometimes you get noise in different locations if you have like storms coming in and pilots have to fly around those. So there are, some things that can affect it overall.
Sure.
A couple of questions. Is the annual report something that we're mandated to do, or is it something we do voluntarily?
Yeah, this is our first time doing it, because again, in response to some of the questions that we're hearing here with the number of calls that we've been seeing as Rob reported over the last 2 or 3 years, and how does that relate to the data that we're collecting through the noise monitoring system. So this is something that Rob put together. We had some input from our chair to kind of give some additional information as to what that data is that we collect relative to those calls that we're seeing and the rise in operations that we've been experiencing over the last few years as well.
We were probably anticipating doing this, but I would suggest that we put this on our website. But we also do, as you would with any technical report, an executive summary. So you have some summaries there, but maybe something that is more plain language and a little bit more in depth, and a place then that anyone could go, whether it's the individuals who are experiencing, the noise issues, or media who have questions. So it's very, very plain language. You use any of your acronyms, obviously, you would explain what they are. And put that there as well. You could also, from a PR perspective, push some of that, so you have a place for it. People come and ask these questions, so you've got continuity, updated every year. So there's good factoids, a little bit varied, but I think we could make good use of your information.
Gene?
Yeah, Robert, as the number 7, which is the furthest monitor from our field, yet it shows some of the highest dB readings. What do you equate that to?
It's location. So even though it's slightly further away, it is lined up directly under the arrival path. So that's gonna, as you can see, it's almost all arrivals. You get a few departures, but most of the departures will turn away from it beforehand. So that's why the departures you get are slightly quieter, because they're already turning, usually back up north. But on the arrivals, it's pretty much right under where the arrival path are. So if you compare it to 5, which is a little bit closer in, it's further offset. So it's going to have a little bit lower numbers. So that's the main thing, is being directly under the aircraft.
I assume most of these arriving aircraft are arriving in power.
Yes, of course.
And on arrivals, what you're hearing more fuselage noise, really at the end of the day, than engine noise, because they're powered back and they glide.
Be surprised how much noise putting down the gear makes.
But sometimes there are power adjustments, obviously, to maintain airspeed and altitude to get to the end of the runway. So, so that does certainly affect.
High drag situation.
Exactly, their plane is dirty.
I'm kind of following up on Cheryl's point. Would there be a couple of key messages here? Like I'm looking at, 75, something like, nearly all the noise, coming out of the airport is like similar to what you would hear on a busy highway. So that it puts it in context, and especially since we're right next to a major interstate, it just kind of shows that that's not a big deal.
It's a reference point.
Exactly, yeah.
Right.
So that it's more definitive and again, like Cheryl said, very clear and just to the point, and it makes a simple message.
And Another point, remember I said some of the factoids I think are very big ones anyway, from a publicly consumable perspective, that even though our operations over 10 years have practically doubled, maybe not quite, practically doubled, the noise level has actually come down. The issue is one of our pages in here talked about how extraordinarily noisy engines are completely banned now, so they're nowhere. So you would pull those out. People who say, yeah, airports noise is bad, kind of, help balance that. That would be in your executive summary. You could need to go through like a little, I won't say infomercial, but kind of a little, what am I trying to say? Info,
Easy reference.
yeah,
The point that
graphic.
a handful of people making the majority.
Now, I'd be careful of that one.
You know, you want to touch it very lightly on.
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
It has to be approached.
Yeah.
In a very light way.
Yeah.
I think we recognize that for every person who does take the time to call us, there are dozens of who don't
Right.
know to or don't wish to. And so
Right.
it's,
It's a touchy
yeah,
subject.
understand.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, there's good information there.
A lot of good stuff.
Thank you.
Right?
So one of the questions that we had as well was, we'll continue to adjust the report, but with this isn't meant to be this was a summary of the entire year. So is this something that you would like us to continue on a yearly basis? Maybe see it more frequently. It is a cyclical, and we're still seeing seasonal changes here at Boca Raton. So I'm not sure how much value there would be in doing it more often than 1 year, but it's meant to be something that is beneficial for getting the information out. So that may be something to think about and give us some
Well,
guidance
we
in
have
the
the
future
monthly
as well.
reports,
Mhm.
so we're doing that. I think an annual report, we talked about it at the last meeting, that for the community who don't
And we can
All
always,
these
and if we
meetings,
get some
they can see
extreme
it.
growth in traffic, which I'm expecting.
Yeah.
We make, put out a semi-annual or a special.
And it does
Especially-
capture those seasonal
Right.
fluctuations, as we do see quite a sharp drop in the summer.
And I would also, I mean, we're going to be talking about some issues with our outside agency. I mean, we look at a statement like noise calls have increased significantly over the last few years, but there's no correlation to noise levels, which have remained the same. Perfectly true statement, but
Oh,
the
yeah.
way you'd want to pitch
Articulate
that is the exact opposite. It is the noise,
Right.
key message there is the second part of that sentence.
Exactly right.
Well, the definition of noise is unwanted sound,
Yes,
so
yeah.
if it's sound that you don't want to hear,
Right.
then it's noise to
Right,
you
that
regardless
kind
of
of
how
buried the lead.
relatively quiet it is.
Robert, very good job. Thank you
Yeah,
for that.
very
Oh,
good.
Gene,
Good job.
one more. Gene.
Since customs was part of this report and reviewing the customs report for the month, in looking at the after hours customs clearances, should we look at adjusting the hours or days of customs?
That's definitely something we can do. You remember when we first opened the facility, that was something that was discussed at the time, and we thought that we would give it some time for the data to come in. So it's certainly something we can look at and discuss with CBP,
Okay,
see what it would cost to do that. You'll recall that almost 2 years ago, about a year and a half ago, they significantly increased the rate,
Yes,
about
right.
70+%. So that was certainly a factor at the time with the activity declining, but we can certainly revisit
We
that.
talked about that.
Mhm.
Yeah, we talked about that.
And we can see how we're doing on our revenues to expenditures. Of course, a lot of the revenues that we do generate, as you know, are from the overtime activity to help offset the regular operation. So it's an analysis we can absolutely do and come back to you with some information on.
Yeah, well, and I also think it's gonna change too, right? Because it's when it's the summer, it'll be
Yeah.
different than
Yeah,
seasonal.
yes.
And when it's later,
Right.
you'll have a different issue as well. So it can be
Right.
tweaked periodically, but it's a good point.
Our cost proposition, as you'll recall, is there's a quarterly big payment for the regular 40-hour shift that we get from CBP for the staffing. And there are some data processing costs as well. But there's also the overtime. So again, with that additional revenue that we generate for the additional overtime fee, there's also an expense that goes with it. So there may be an offset there that'd be worth to look at now. Mrs. Holden. We'd be happy to do that.
And Gene, would your thought process be add another day or
I don't know,
swap
I
it
just-
for one that might be a
I guess looking
slower day?
at the arrivals versus the time element, are we serving the
The
needs
core, yeah.
of our,
Yeah.
of pilots?
Right, and as you'll recall, the facility is open, except for Tuesdays and Wednesdays, which then Mr. Folden's point there, we do see quite a bit of activity.
But I assume there are the slowest days. You know, when we pick them, where they're, if they're not, maybe that's what I'm saying. Swap out a Thursday for Wednesday. Or,
Right.
I don't know.
That's all part of
To
what
keep the
we,
costs down, keep the
Right.
cost benefit and all that.
that's all part of the analysis
Yeah.
that we can certainly do, looking back at the last 3 years. Of course, 2020 was, and even now, as you saw, we're still sort of impacted by some of those travel restrictions, but hopefully things will start to open up here very soon and we'll have a better data set.
Yeah.
2019 was a great year, but it showed us it was a result of the TFRs. So again, we don't have 1 year yet of just sort of regular
What is
customs
normal? What is the
operations.
baseline?
Yeah.
Exactly, because 2019 was TFRs, 2020 was, and most of 2021 were the pandemic years. So what does a normal customs year look like?
Yeah.
But we can do some preliminary analysis and be prepared for when we do have that normal customs year.
Because your trends might be the same even during COVID.
Exactly.
It might just be
Right.
the overall numbers would be pressed, but my guess is the trends would be
It
the
may
same.
be.
People that are traveling on
Seasons.
Thursdays,
Right.
seasons, those aren't going to change. Just the relative
Yeah.
number would change.
No, it's good to keep it on the radar. Good point. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Robert. Good job. Appreciate that. Next up is emergency procurement, airport road improvement project. And Scott's going to handle that for us. Scott?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair. As the board's probably aware, if you've driven down Airport Road or 95, the road project is progressing quite rapidly at this point. There's been a lot of progress in the last few weeks that's been visible. However, there was one aspect of the work that the contractor was not able to successfully complete. That aspect is the precast wall features that you see up here. You'll recall from some of the earlier renderings that these sort of bracket in many of the entrances to kind of block out and hide that big ugly concrete culvert wall there at the bottom and that little architectural interest. The contractor couldn't find a precast vendor and wanted to try to do it in a cast in place manner. We let them give an attempt. If you frequent Airport Road, you might have noticed there was a wall that was subsequently torn down. They just couldn't get the quality standards and meet the dimensions and just the sharp crispness that we're going for with the precast look. So since they weren't able to do that work, we removed it from their scope. However, the way the walls are designed is they act sort of as the sidewalk there acts as a counterbalance to the turning moment of the precast wall. So there are portions of sidewalk that cannot be installed until this work is done. And since we have most of the rest of the sidewalk in there, you'll notice there's some more foot traffic and that really creates a potential hazardous situation for pedestrians as they traverse the road. So working with legal counsel, we approached another bidder that had submitted a bid for the project. They were interested in doing the work. So they gave us a new price for it. Obviously, the pricing that they had previously offered was nearly 2 years old. It is a little bit more than the amount that's in the current contract at $625,790. Now, that's not completely out of the range of the original bids. The highest original bid was in the $750,000 range. So even though we've seen an increase in material costs and labor, it is still below that range. So since they're willing to do the work and we believe they're capable, we went ahead and awarded them the contract to get them underway. Now that they are under contract, it should take them about 60 days to procure the precast materials and to do the work. So tonight, the ask for management is Airport Management recommends approval of resolution number 02-02-22, ratifying the airport director's decision to enter into a contract with Ranger Construction Industries Incorporated to complete the precast wall features and associated sidewalk along Airport Road in accordance with section 10 of the emergency procurement of the BRAA code.
Okay, we have a recommendation motion.
Yeah, I'll
Mitch, and No, second. Any discussion, questions from Scott? Questions on contractors, anything? Objections?
looks good. I tried to count all the palm trees as I drove by there the other day. I lost count around 50, but man, it's gorgeous.
It's amazing, the
And so
difference it made.
it looks
The
so
landscaping
And
the
Ranger, the
sidewalk.
company they use.
Ranger, yeah.
They're actually out here doing the work on the taxiway
Oh,
currently,
really?
so that's another benefit of using them. They're already mobilized to the site.
Oh,
Good company.
any other questions or discussion? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Appreciate that. All right, next up is the airport projects update and Travis, why am I gonna present that? Okay, Travis?
Mr. Chair, let's touch off and just kind of dovetail into a little bit of the airport road. Now that everybody actually can see a few things actually taking place, the trees and some of the curbing and landscaping going in. For the last couple months, everything's been pretty much underground. It's just a big hole in it where you can't really tell what's actually going on just by driving through it. Just got a few photos, but if you've driven down it, you probably notice what's on the photos anyway. So the trees gone in since the last time.
Sorry, you got those clicker.
Oh, that works.
Yep.
Yeah, so just in general, the day after they installed some of the trees, middle of the way towards the airport road, the small amount of area to plant, but they seem to be confident everything's going to take hold. Some of the deliveries of the trees, so I believe they've got another. What the exact count left, but you said you stopped counting at 50, there's probably another 30 to 45 at least
Holy cow.
gotta go get installed. So they got another probably 1,500 feet or so, I think, to put trees along some of the roadway. So
It's great.
it's getting there. And then the big, the fun effort was the initial mill and pave. So that's a little maintenance traffic is always fun, trying to shut down the directions and have the flagman and all that. But necessary evil, so they've got the initial milling and first course of asphalt down, majority of the areas, so that touch up areas around the medians. Some of the action shots, them milling the old asphalt up. They intend to do the remainder of the paving in hopefully one effort, so it's the final paving course, it's gonna be the finished grade when everyone drives over. Along the same time frame that they do the ADA work around the entrances and things to make sure the sidewalks are the correct grade. Some of the entrance driveways need a slight touch up. They're gonna do all that sometime in the next coming weeks. Not a job I would like to do in the summer. It's a little warm, but it's made fairly decent progress so far. And anybody has any questions on that for the next one? You said everyone, you kind of start seeing what's gonna take shape now, so it's actually coming together a little bit. Another mentions the taxiway project we currently have going on with the Ranger construction. They have completed the majority of phase one and moved on to the other section of phase two, which phase one was widening of Papa 4 and relocation of Bravo. That is now complete. Both of those intersections are open with temporary markings on them. They'll get the final stripe after at least a 30-day care period for the asphalt. The next phase that they now have shut down is taxiway Foxtrot getting widened, and Charlie is shut down for relocation. They have successfully completed the demolition of Charlie and the first milling of Foxtrot. So they're actually moving fairly quickly. This is some of the shots that they removed the old taxiway, so the low-tech closure X that's on the ground, in case someone flew by all the barricades and then the lack of asphalt on the ground. It's required, so it was there.
Somebody was on their cell phone.
That was fun.
Yeah, so there are barricades next to the runway saying do not come here anymore. And one of the other things for safety, the first thing they do is before they remove the lights and signs from the old taxiways, they actually cover them up. So they're black plastic bags over the signs, and there's not an arrow saying taxiway this direction, it's just it's a black sign, and then cover over all the edge lights and things for safety. So just a few shots, one of the new signs going in, so that's one of the side benefits of having to relocate stuff to get all the signs. No more faded anything. That's the other day after we opened up the new taxiway Bravo. Those markings are just temporary. The permanent will be a lot brighter with reflective beads. We just can't put them on without the asphalt being here yet. the closure center commits. That's not how I have the photos. The next one's haven't happened yet, so we can't take it yet. The other one in line is the phase 4, the security enhancements. Well, nice enough to stop by yesterday and review some of the project details. This would be basically upgrading and enhancing all the current access control systems and camera networks around. The ones now are starting to fail. Kind of their end of life. We've replaced roughly half of them already. Camera wise, either due to afternoon storms, something getting zapped, or just end of lifespan. But it would also basically greatly upgrade all the capabilities of the recording. So the cameras we're going to install now have 360-degree view capability with a lot longer range zoom at the same time. They've come leaps and bounds in the last 5, 6, 7 years. 1080p and 4K displays, that type of thing. So one of the upgrades of each gate, instead of just having, like we currently have a PTZ pointing at the gate itself to capture who comes through, it will be pointed like that and capture the driver's face and swipe a card as they do now. But it's also 360-degree view around there at the same time. So right now, if something happens, but right before they get to the gate or they hit the card reader or post up there, we don't capture that. Now it would be kind of more big picture. And also the upgrades, the ones on the tower cab overlooking the entire airport get the same treatment, even longer range zooms to be able to capture the ends of the runways, the run-up areas a little better, that type of thing. Some of the other upgrades would be the recording software and hardware would have to be greatly upgraded just for the storage capacity. You're recording in HD or a lot more in depth and just general storage is quadrupled. So that some of that hardware would have to be procured. And the other would be all new hardware at each gate, search suppression, lightning protection, new card readers, pedestals, the whole nine. Others will be upgrades to this building to add a couple of access control points to some of the hallways here. Now that we're having meetings here, it's a little easier to kind of section off the building a little bit while we open up the front. Also adding an additional number of cameras here to get a better 360-degree view around the building and for future pointing over to the potential future observation area. So go ahead and capturing that. And some of the others would be just a couple upgrades to the electrical vault, and just general all around capabilities, adding the fiber optic line, better redundancy if something does get broken, hit, that type of thing. Let me see here. And we just got delivered the 100% plans yesterday. So we'll have that out on the street for bid at some point in the next few weeks. Next up in line is something that's also almost up to spec on the plan sets of the tower radio communications electronics upgrade. I think we touched on this in the last project update. So basically all of their communications equipment will be getting replaced and upgraded with new radios, new antennas, new surge suppressant, new lightning protection, GPS clocks, motion recorders, all that stuff. It's all roughly the same time frame. It's over 10 years ago. So it's nearing the end of its expected life, and some of the things that started to need additional repairs that warrants full replacement of some of these. I believe we should be seeing the 90% plan sometime in the next few weeks. And then right in behind that is close to a 90% plan set the navigation and airfield lighting and signage upgrade. This would be the design phase of basically the entire airfield. New underground cabling, new signage, new lights, all LED technology. So hopefully the electrical drops a little bit, becomes a little more reliable at the same time. And it should actually allow us to, when we put new regulators in the electrical bulb downsides to the next side of down, between us, so not having to push all the old incandescents and transformers and things like that. And that's well into design, and then just be phasing some install after that. But we hope to see the 90% plan set sometime in spring. So.
Thank you, Travis. Any questions? A lot of projects going on. Yeah. Okay, thank you, Travis. Okay, next item is authority board member requests or reports. Any issues, questions, comments? Sure.
At the risk of sounding self-serving, we were table about our honorarium not changing for the last 4 years. What if we were to ask Clara and staff or council or whatever the appropriate process is to just do a little blue sky research for us and say, what are other agencies doing? Are we in sync here? Is it appropriate? And just get back to us. And it may be that we just say, hey, it is what it is. But 40 years. That's what you just said.
We happened to
Traumatized in-
eavesdrop on that conversation, Ms. Bud, and
Okay.
decided that we agree,
Okay.
and we will do some research
40
with other
years.
airport authorities within the state to see what they do and report back as to the
great.
process. And we think you earned it.
$1,000.
Yeah, we certainly, as we do with other practices, we want to make sure that we're keeping up with best practices within and leading the way within similarly situated organizations across the state, so certainly.
Thank you.
Mitch,
No, good.
Gene, doing good? No? It's great, okay.
Unfortunately, I'll miss the March meeting. I'll be on a business trip and unable to attend even telephonically, so I'll see you in April.
Okay, great. And thank you, everybody, for showing up at 5 o'clock with the big time change. I think it's worked well. I look around the room, anybody not happy with it, feel free to speak, but, okay, I think we'll keep.
5 o'clock.
Oh,
Yeah.
Staff like.
Christine, any public comment? Any other comments? Public comments? Any other business?
So
Amy?
I just wanted to note that Janice has joined us today, and the reason for that is because I will be away from my responsibilities. I'm having another spinal surgery in the beginning of March, and so I will come back, hopefully, all things going well at the end of April. Hopefully taller as well. That would be very nice. But you guys are going to be in very good hands with Miss Janice here, and obviously Bob is also very well aware of what's going on. So you will see a different face, but you've got the same team, and hopefully you won't miss me at all.
Oh, we will. Janice, we've seen you before, and thank you for the continuity.
That's right.
All right. Best wishes, Amy. We'll see you in a
Yes.
couple months.
Good luck.
Okay, I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion second.